Hi, everyone. I'm Patrick Holton from Graduate Business Career Relations. And today what we're going to be doing is talking about job and internship search success in 2021. As you know, so much has been changing and going on in the landscape of careers in this past year. So we will be talking about a number of different strategies to help you be successful. By the end of the program, you'll be able to think about some of the elements that you need to have a successful search. We're going to talk about ways that things have changed, how it's different, what you need to be doing differently to stand out in an environment now that's taking place just like this meeting, via Zoom versus in person. You're not able to shake hands, say hello to people. So we're going to give you some resources and tips that'll help you out as well as you work through the process. So some of the things that are different in 2021 versus in the past, what we're going to be doing is looking at some of the key industries that are going to be booming. There's a lot of growth potential that's coming out of this environment and gives you some opportunities, if you're flexible, to be successful. You also have to think on your feet and keep moving and looking at different opportunities, because in some environments, due to the furloughs that many companies have had, they're looking at ways to bring people into the workforce via temporary, freelance, and even contract work. That some of the major even banks and financial services companies are talking about that and utilize that as a key entry point into the organization for you. Also, remote work is going to be here to stay in some cases. And with that, many organizations now, there was just a survey that I was reading about over the past couple of days, where many of the people in Long Island are looking at things taking place in New York City. The majority of companies in New York City are looking at the potential of maybe starting to bring people back in September. But with those, the majority of companies that are going to be bringing people back towards the latter part of the year are actually talking about people still working and serving in hybrid roles, which means that you may be on site in an office building for a portion of the week, but the majority of your time will take place remote. What this will also do is, which also relies back to getting into an organization, getting your foot in the door as a contract or potential temporary worker, because the internal talent marketplace is going to be huge. Companies are looking at ways to promote and keep people in-house, so that it really allows for more growth opportunities when you would get into an organization. But it's also there that you'll see as ways that it's much cheaper for a company as well. If you were going to go out to market to hire and use a third-party search firm, it may cost you 25 to 30% of the annual starting salary to hire someone, where promoting someone from within doesn't cost you really anything to do. So many companies are looking at that. There's also minimal learning curve with the remote workplace. They know that you can perform in that remote strategy and still be successful. So the quicker you can get yourself in the door somewhere, the better off you'll be. Now, one of the big things that you can see from this time last year was when kind of the bottom dropped out and unemployment skyrocketed. So as companies were having to shut their doors, move remote, many organizations weren't prepared, didn't know how to handle it. So many companies moved to things like furloughs. Some did temporary layoffs. There were a number of different strategies that companies had to do just to be able to keep their doors open and survive. And as you see, as each month has gone on, they have hired back more and more people. And they've also seen the needs that they have for new types of talent, new types of people to come into their organizations to really help them succeed in this new environment for them. So they're looking at things, that new skills that they didn't always rely on. In a lot of the face-to-face environments, they didn't always rely so much on people that had technical skills, data abilities, that now are going to become commonplace for what people are looking for. A partial list of some of the industries right now who are performing well and hiring pretty substantially. And performing well, it depends how you look at performing well. If you're looking at the stock market, you'll look at our first bullet and say, well, the tech industry isn't doing so well. The stocks are going up and down like a yo-yo in that side of the space. So they may not be performing as well in the stock market, but they are really doing well from a hiring perspective. They're bringing in a lot of new types of talent into their organizations. You look at the healthcare and health tech industries, fintech, e-commerce, even the finance and accounting spaces, they're hiring. Their job positions are changing a bit. So, for example, in finance and accounting, if you're looking to get into an accounting spot, those roles are going to be doing more in the way of working with data, using info systems, analytics to do the job, that are really going to be making things easier for people. So there was a call that I was on where people were talking from EY and Deloitte at how they're using drones to do their physical counts now for auditors. So they're not sending out individual auditors to count, say for Gap, how many sweaters or sweatshirts they have in their warehouses. They're using robotics, they're using drones, they're using things like that to conduct those for them now. So who would have thought that you would need someone that would have drone experience to be working at an accounting firm if you were thinking about it 5 or 10 years ago? Some of the others, obviously, virtual customer service is huge now, because I don't know if you see around the streets by you, but all I see going by are UPS, FedEx, Amazon trucks. Everyone's ordering everything online. So there are a lot of questions that come along with that you don't get to ask someone in store for you. So what does that mean for you as you're looking into the job market? One thing that you're going to look at, your digital presence is going to be critical to your success. So since you're not going to be able to necessarily meet someone directly at a career fair, at a networking event, and spend 5 minutes of one-on-one conversation with them, it's going to be important that if you are able to reach out to them, connect with them via LinkedIn or other avenues, that they're going to be able to learn as much as they can about you from that footprint. So not only is it helpful to be on those sites like LinkedIn, but you also have to be careful for what you have out there in the rest of your social media as well, because companies are going to be doing a lot more Google searches, Bing searches, everything else on their candidates to really find out who you are. So you have to make sure your entire footprint and digital presence is something that you really want to be what displays you as a candidate, which means you have to be careful with what you have out there of what you do on the weekends and your private time, because if you're putting it on social media, it's no longer your private time, it is public time that people are able to look at and see what you're doing there. So you have to be very careful there. Also, geographic options for you. That kind of goes out the window for a lot of organizations. I don't know if everyone else has been looking and following, but you have organizations like companies like Twitter, who are saying that their employees may never come back on campus. And not only is it in technology or social media companies, but even financial firms. Synchrony Financial, which is based up in Connecticut, they actually announced a few months back that their employees are going to be able to decide whether they want to work remote 100% of the time or come into the office for portions of time. So it can provide you a lot of opportunities to look at companies you may not have thought were an opportunity for you in the past. You can look at those and see which companies are really going to be staying remote the longest. And if that's something that's in your wheelhouse and of interest, you can really find a number of companies who are looking to hire this way. Online networking is only going to continue to go forward and grow for you. That's going to be important to make yourself stand out as you reach out to people, as you learn how to network, make the most out of these Zoom sessions and any of these other environments that people are utilizing to replace the in-person information sessions with these variety of ways to network. So when you sit in a Zoom room with potentially 50 to 100 students, you have to make sure that you can stand out and not just be one of these little boxes that's sitting on page 1 or page 3, depending on where you are in the signups, that you really have to utilize the opportunities that you can to ask questions, to ask smart questions, so that you can stand out as a participant in these events to show your interest. And also, you have to be flexible right now, because that right fit that exact dream job that you may have always had in the back of your head may not be around right now, may not be open at this point in time. So you have to really look at your skills, how you can leverage what you're working on, what your background is, and the things that you can do to really stand out as a candidate. So in some cases, you may have to put off, like I said, that dream job that you've had, that perfect employer, the perfect company. You may have to put that off for a few years to really find an opportunity that can get you the right experience and the right exposure that are really going to help you build the skills that are required to move into some of those opportunities as the job market continues to expand and continues to loosen up over time. So as you're looking for these opportunities, I know I talk to students all the time who are saying, I'm looking all over the place for jobs, and you really need to. A lot of the opportunities that are out there when you're looking at places for where should you be looking at jobs to apply, you can look at places like Handshake. Handshake for us is a portal where if you're not familiar, where companies come directly to Hofstra and to Zarb and say, I want to look for students from the university to hire. And with that, you're not participating when you're applying to positions via Handshake. You're really going up in competition against maybe hundreds of people versus if you go to an Indeed where you may be going up against thousands of candidates. So the funnel for where you're looking to find jobs, Handshake, it gives you a little bit more of a little bit smaller of a talent pool that you're competing against for these opportunities in these positions. Some of the other spots that you see here as well are internships.com, Parker Dewey, which is another micro internship organization we've started to work with. There's another that's not on here yet who we just started working with. That's the forage.com, who provide other experiential opportunities for you to really beef up and bulk up your resume. LinkedIn is a tremendous place to find job opportunities because not only do you find job opportunities within organizations, but you can also find potentially people within your network who might be able to help you secure a role inside of those companies. Also, EFMD Global is another organization that you can access via the Career Hub that provide opportunity at top tier companies, both domestically and international opportunities as well for you. So those are great resources for you to go on and participate in the different events they have, as well as post for those positions. Another resource, which is on the right-hand side of my screen, is vault.com, which is another great resource. They have an ongoing blog that's providing updates and resources around dealing with coronavirus and finding opportunities that are on there to keep you motivated and kind of following the trends that are going on. But also there are career and industry guides that are in there too. So if you're looking at and saying, I'd like to get into whether it's I'm a marketing major and I'm interested in getting into consumer marketing, or if you're looking at digital media companies to work for and identifying which are the top 50, digital marketing companies in existence right now. They have guides that support you in both directions as you start to launch your search. So you can find new and up and coming organizations and companies as well during those industry guides. I came out of a career in the finance industry, and I'm always surprised each year when I go out and look at the different top 100 firms in banking and general financial services at the growth that some organizations have had. So companies that are now in the top 50 that I would have not maybe thought of as even being in the top 200 2 or 3 years ago. So it actually keeps a gauge on the industry so that you know who are the top players right now, which can help you identify additional opportunities for you as well. So when you start to look at applying at positions, utilizing this would be using LinkedIn for your job search, but it's not only with LinkedIn. You can use these same strategies for applying on multiple websites. So a big piece for you to do is not only you can look by job title if you know that you want something like a financial analyst role, or if you want something that might be, a marketing coordinator. You can run the search by job title, but it's also helpful if you do things with keywords as well. for you so that if you're able to utilize keywords and skills. And these keywords and skills you can find from multiple job descriptions as you're looking throughout. So you can it can help you also find, for example, this sample shows data intern and SQL. A lot of times what you can do is if you just put those keywords in there without a job title, this might also help you realize some different opportunities that might be available for you that you may not have been aware of before, so that it can help you see things in different industries for you. For example, a lot of people look at, so if you're a marketing student, a lot of times, I'll talk to people about financial services companies, about accounting firms, about other tech companies. And they're like, well, I'm not a finance student. I'm not a banking student. I'm not a computer science student, so I don't know how tech would work for me. But many of these companies are hiring across the board. So if you look at those utilizing the keywords and skills that you have, it'll really connect you to more opportunities that are out there, not just a limited scope of working within a given industry for you. So that can also provide you with additional opportunities for positions that you may not have thought of in the past. So you can go through and look for, like I said, through LinkedIn. One of the biggest value propositions is that you can identify people within the companies directly from within the tool. Some of the job postings, I used to see it more frequently, but it's still there in some instances where the recruiter you'll be able to see who the recruiter is who's hiring for a position. If you apply for a position on LinkedIn, the expectation of a recruiter is that you're going to reach out to them via LinkedIn and let them know of your interest in the position, telling them that you saw that they're the hiring manager for the position or the recruiter for the position, that you'd love the opportunity to speak with them, to at least network with them, learn more about the opportunity. I was on the recruiting side for a number of years, and I would say less than 10% of the people who would apply for positions through LinkedIn, and I always had my profile attached to my job postings, less than 10% of applicants would actually reach out to me via LinkedIn. And when they would reach out to me to tell me that they applied for the position, the least I would do was actually take a look at their profile to see if I was missing something. Because if you just apply through the app, through LinkedIn, send it in through the applicant tracking system and don't reach out to anyone, you're really just hoping and praying that your score comes out high enough in the applicant tracking system so that you're going to score high enough that they're going to have the need to reach out to you. So you're competing against a lot of people there. But if you take that extra step to reach out to someone, it's really going to help you move forward as a potential candidate for them. You may not always hear back from the recruiter, but a lot of times they'll at least take a look. I've even hired people that applied for different positions. I used to hire a lot of quant finance analysts, and the quants were very, very technical. So I would have people that may have been more focused and better fits for credit or market risk positions that don't require as quantitative experience, potentially not as much coding and the like. So I would get candidates that would reach out to me on LinkedIn, letting me know they applied, and I would ask them, would you be interested in a credit position or a market risk position instead? Most cases, sure, they'd be interested in that. So it would help me find candidates for other roles I had open as well. So you can really leverage LinkedIn a lot. Again, you're not always going to hear back from everyone, but the more people you reach out to and reach out in a good way, the better off you're going to be when it comes time for finding that right position. So how do you research and find your job targets for positions? Sure, you can look at job titles, right, and see how that fits for you. You can also take a look at the different industries that are out there who are hiring. Like I said, you can use the Vault guides for those. You can look at different things in the media that talk about specific industries that you may have interest in. I know sometimes I'll talk to students who are very, very specific about industries with pinpoints that they really know, there are really a small number of companies in that space, but I really want to work for one of those. Try to narrow it down as much as you can, but also be flexible right now, because sometimes, like I said, that dream job, that dream industry may not be hiring right now at this point in time. For example, if you're a marketing person who wants to work with live in-person events, obviously they're not going to be necessarily hiring too many people for live and in-person events when we're at kind of 10% capacity, maybe getting up to 20% in the near future. But that kind of game day or event-driven staff really may not be a high priority for them at this point in time. But folks on the digital marketing side doing other pieces of revenue building and generation within their customer base, within the advertising companies, that may provide more of an opportunity for you at this point in time. So just really kind of keep an eye on things and think about for yourself too, from a location perspective. Are you open to potentially relocating somewhere else? Are you someone who's comfortable working remote and would be happy working for a company that works and spends 100% of their time remote, a hybrid role? There's a lot more conversation around that with the locations right now on being remote or not than there have been in the past. But so you really have to know for yourself if that's something that you would do, especially with the relocation. Don't necessarily take it if you're looking for a position that's remote right now. If the job's listed as being in Chicago and they're saying that we're expecting the person in the job to eventually be in person in Chicago, be prepared to move to Chicago at some point in time. Don't just take the virtual role now and continue and then drop the position, kind of 2 months, anywhere from 2 months to 6 months from now, when they would be moving on to bringing people back in person for their roles. So what skills can make you stand out to employers, right? When you're thinking about it, what are the things that are going to really help you stand out for companies? One good thing that you can do in researching jobs and companies, what you can do is take a look at the job postings in those spaces. Look at the titles of the positions, look at them, find the similarities. There are a lot of keywords that companies use over and over again. So you make sure you get those into your resume. See what skills you might be missing right now. There's a big shift into different uses of technology. There's new software that comes out on a regular basis. So you may want to take a look at what are those skills that are out there right now. Which ones are you very strong at, and which ones are you not so strong at? So that when you're in the interview, an interviewer's going to know, a recruiter's going to know that if they have 4 skills on there that they have as key requirements for the job and you meet 3 of them, generally the recruiter's going to ask you about that 4th one. Why isn't it on your resume right now? And what are you doing to get that experience on your resume? What are you doing to build that skill? And sometimes that can be you may have an opportunity through an internship or other experience to build that skill, but in others, it might be being self-taught. It might be going out to something like a Coursera or LinkedIn Learning to really help build and beef up that skill. And that's okay for employers right now. They want to see what you're going to do to learn and expand upon your knowledge and how you stay up to date with what's going on. So that's going to be critical for you, is to really see what skills are out there right now that are needed and where you are with them. Be honest with yourself too, with the skills. I've had people that when I've interviewed them that are experts on their resume, they're experts in Excel. And then I ask them, okay, so what can you do with VLOOKUP, pivot tables? Oh, I haven't worked with those. So never say you're an expert at something, because someone's always going to be better at it than you are. So it's very challenging if you oversell yourself on your resume and have someone ask you a question on it. Be honest about where you are on a skill level with something. If you can utilize certain tools, highlight it, talk about what you've done with it, but don't oversell yourself, because if you oversell your skills, you also don't want to be in a job where you don't know what you're doing when you get there day one. Now we'll move on a little bit into your resume and what's the purpose of it, right? Especially now. You're not going to be able to go up and necessarily speak with someone and have conversations as frequently with people. So this is your main marketing tool for you. Think about your resume as the way that when you're going to reach out to companies, it's going to be fed into that machine that's going to read and look at everything from an applicant tracking system. it's going to be what causes people to either call you or not call you, realistically. So you really have to emphasize the right things for you. So you have to show that you're motivated. You have to talk about the skills and competencies that are relevant to the positions, to the industries that you're looking for. So the big focus with that is so that you can really get yourself to the top of the pile in the applicant tracking systems. So the applicant tracking system, what it does, I used it and lived in the applicant tracking systems. I loved it. I had it programmed so that I could look at and have all of my candidates scored from 100 to 0. And I hopefully look at maybe 25 to 50 resumes of people that came in, and I would hope they would be scored 90 and above. That bottom group, I'm going to tell you, some firms and companies are going to tell you, we look at every resume that comes in. I never did that. And I would tell people that. I would look at, hopefully I was praying that I didn't have to look at more than 50 resumes before I could start interviewing candidates, and hopefully would identify people out of that top 50. So you need to figure out a way to get yourself into that top 50 in scoring. And the biggest way to do that is some of these pieces right here. One of which is your skills section. Don't just do a laundry list of, I've seen people that, kind of put everything they've ever done or worked on or ever touched, but they don't have the ability to actually quantify or talk about that experience. Make sure that if you're using a skill, including a skill on your resume, that you're able to talk about what you've done with it, how you've utilized Excel. If you've done things, for example, with any type of, I've seen a lot on kind of the Google SEO sides of the house. If you're going to put that you have that as a skill, you need to really be able to talk about how you've utilized it, why it's a skill, what you've done with it. Make sure that you're using things that are in the job titles. Use words that are directly in the job postings themselves. Because as I said, many companies within an industry or organization are going to utilize the same terminologies of requirements for skills and things that are in there. If you have enough experience, so if you have a few years of experience, you can use potentially a career summary. My suggestion, if you're utilizing a career summary, be specific to the roles, be specific to what you're looking to do. Don't just put in your resume, I'm an MBA student from Hofstra, and I have the skills of X and Y, and that's it. Make sure that you're focused on a little bit more detail. Make sure those skills and keywords that you're putting in that summary are tied to the position that you're looking to hire. That doesn't mean you need to necessarily have a separate resume for every job you apply to. But if you're posting to like 2 or 3 different job types, you very well may need 2 or 3 different resumes that you're working from that are going to highlight things for you. Make sure you list your accomplishments, not just the tasks that you have. I'm going to get into a little bit more about what that means in a few moments. And make sure that you incorporate the keywords that are important to the industry right now for you. 2 tools you can utilize that really help you with all of this on your resume are JobScan and VMock. What JobScan does, VMock gives you it gives you artificial intelligence and machine learning feedback on your resume that really helps you stand out as a candidate. And what JobScan does is scores your resume as it applies to an exact job description. So before you apply for a job, what you can do is go to JobScan. You can upload your resume, and you can upload your job description, the job description that you're planning to apply for. It'll give you a score and tell you where you may stand as a candidate. So obviously you want the highest score you possibly can. So it's better to go through now and see where you match or may not be a match for the position, so that you can either, 1, fix your resume accordingly, or 2, develop those skills that I referenced before as potentially having a skill gap for you, so that you really want to take a look at all of those things for you as you're going on through the search process. So now for the resume, when you're looking at it, what you need to do is make sure that For example, this is a potential for a business analytics resume. As I said, it's not just talking about, if you look at the skills up top, it doesn't just stop short of saying I'm an MBA student with these two strengths. It goes a little bit further and talks about working with Excel, working with SPSS. They would probably be skills that are requirements inside of the job posting. So what happens is this resume, when it pops up on screen in an ATS, so say I'm a recruiter, I saw that this resume scored at 85%. So I click it out, I click on it to look. What it's also going to do for me is it's going to be highlighted all of the keywords that I have as the key requirements, core skills that are required for that position I'm looking to hire for. So you want to have as much of that information up in these top portions of the resume. So that's something that you really have to be sure that you're doing, so that it would highlight, so that if I were looking at it as a recruiter, I would not want this to be just something that looks currently how it's not highlighted at all. You want it to really be color coded, because each of the keywords and skills are generally color coded and pop out for me. So I'm able to see all of the specific skills and accomplishments that you have. And for talking about those accomplishments, it's always critical. I see regularly for resumes, here are the tasks that I have. A lot of the resumes focus initially on, here's what I was required to do. Here's the kind of laundry list of details of what I had to do. Here's the minutia of what I worked on. But what recruiters really want to see is the accomplishment, the so what. So you were assigned this project, right? You had to work on these different, you might have been working on a budget, on revenue. You really want to talk about the size, the scope of what you've worked on. You want to talk about the so what. So you were assigned to work on a social media campaign. What happened because of that social media campaign? Did it increase usership? Did it raise revenue? Did it lead to, more followers? Did it lead to you being to that group or site being pulled in and referenced somewhere in the media? You really have to think about all of those types of things and tell that story in the resume. If you just have as your on your resume a bullet point that says launch Facebook and Twitter social media campaigns, and that's it, as a recruiter, that really doesn't mean much to me, because what happened because of it? What was the outcome? That's what you have to look at. And I get it. We understand that you may not always have a tremendous amount of outcomes to really focus on when you're a student. If you're on an internship that may have lasted anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks, you may not have tremendous outcomes to really talk about for each and every bullet point. But wherever you possibly can, you really want to focus and really build in those opportunities for you where you can talk about the size, the scope, the outcomes. If you were a salesperson, what you did to meet those targets, to exceed targets, anything from those sides from there. If you did something that also, my background comes from one where in financial services, I was looking for ways to cut costs, to cut headcount, to do things like that. So a lot of my pieces for some of my roles actually focus more on how I was able to reduce expenses, reduce costs. So it's not always thinking about things of, where did I earn more money? Where did I, increase the spend? My role a lot was to cut costs and to sometimes cut people too. So that's some of the things that I would highlight for certain roles over others. So now that you've gone through all of this, you've sent in your resume, you reached out to the recruiter, and you're getting that opportunity to really have a quick conversation with someone. This might be at a networking event. It might be through some other way of being able to kind of speak with someone. You have to be ready to have that pitch of here's who I am. Here's the value proposition I provide to you as an employer. Also, I never liked the question, but I'm guilty of asking it too on a regular basis. That tell me about yourself. So in many cases, that 30 seconds or 2 minutes and never go above 2 minutes on that tell me about yourself, because then the person's zoning out. They're thinking about what they're having for lunch after they get off the interview with you. They're thinking about what they're going to be doing next. So you want to keep it concise and really pointing to the important information that's relevant for that person as a recruiter. And it's really tell me about yourself is tell me why you're good for this position. So it's not just kind of a name, rank, and serial number type of feedback. You can talk about your experience. You can talk about your decision to go back potentially for higher education to get your degree. But the big things that you want to really highlight in that 30 seconds to 2 minutes, really think about what were those top 2 or 3 requirements that the company listed on that job description and who you are in relation to those 2 or 3 key pieces of who they're looking to hire. So that's what you really want the focus to be. You want to finish those, minute or so with them wanting to ask you more about a particular project that you may have done, a particular type of experience you may have. You really want to have it so that they want to dig deeper, want to ask more questions of you from it. So that elevator pitch is something that's very, very critical for you to really work on, to hone in on, and be comfortable with. Sometimes you're going to get asked something like that, whether it's tell me about yourself, why should I hire you, who are you, I've been asked, so who are you? And it's those types of questions really mean, it's not as prophetic as a question as it may sound. It's who are you in relation to why I would want to hire you. So those are the types of things you really want to focus on and think about in that conversation. The more you do it, the better you're going to get. And you'll have to tailor it every here and there, but it's something you need to really look at and get comfortable with for you, especially in a virtual environment. It's generally one of those things that will be asked on a question for you right out of the gate. So as you're going into all of this, you really need to think about your LinkedIn profile as well. As you're building out or beefing up your LinkedIn profile alongside of your resume, make sure that you have a photo that's professional. Now, a professional photo now is not the same as it's always been. I came out of the finance industry. So when I was in that space at that point in time, your profile picture was always a suit and tie. That's what you used to do. But now you have to know what your industry is. I used to work in my role that I did a lot of work with, actually, funny enough, LinkedIn, that from a recruiting perspective, I was one of the early companies using LinkedIn Recruiter. Their folks would have, like one of the sales guys' profiles pictures was him standing on his head next to the LinkedIn logo in their office space. And his catchphrase for his headline was turning recruiting on its head. So it's a catchy thing that he did. So you have to just make it match and know the industry that you're in. P.S. I went into an interview at one point in time at LinkedIn to potentially work there, and I came in my suit and tie, and the interviewer told me, "Guy, just take the tie off. I'm itchy with it on." So you have to really know the environment that you go to when you're in the interviews, when you're going for them. Make sure your profile itself, make sure that all of this information is updated, that it has the skills, the keywords that you need to have in there for all of these things, from your summary to your experience, your education. Another thing to make sure that you do, make sure it matches what you have on your resume too, because they will look at it side by side. And if it doesn't match, there's going to be some questions that may get asked of you, because a lot of times people will put, and I've caught plenty of people that will do this, they'll put targets and outcomes on their resume that I increased sales by 200%. But when you look on LinkedIn, it says they raised it by 25%. So why do they have one at 25% and one by 200%? My assumption is you're lying as a candidate, and because LinkedIn's public, you're going to put the actual information on LinkedIn, and then you're going to tell other information to employers to make them want to hire you. So just make sure things connect and really are kind of folding through and really kind of make sense and connect between the resume and your LinkedIn profile. Ways to grow your network for you. You can always look at different ways of utilizing friends and family if it makes sense, looking at professors, colleagues, current students, working with alumni to identify, because it's an important and a great way for you to stay in contact with people that you never know where you're going to cross paths again. I don't know how many of you were on last week's JP Morgan event, but one of the speakers on the JP Morgan event, probably about 10 years back, was still a student in school in Florida. I actually met him on campus, and he had applied for a position within the company that I was hiring for. So we connected on LinkedIn. We stayed kind of loosely in touch over for a little bit of time, but now 10 years later, he logs on to an event where I was part of it as well. So it's a great way to reconnect with people. So it's one of those things that your network, you never know where it's going to come back to help you, to potentially, allow you to get more traction or just keep a relationship going as you go through. So the more you work to build your network, it's also important to keep it going. There are other ways that you can identify people as well as ways to connect with organizations right now. It's pretty critical for you to look at some of these as you're entering into the workspace, that you can look at some of these different organizations to join. There are a number of, this is just a very, very small sampling of some organizations that are out there, but there are a vast opportunity for you to get into different networking organizations, different professional organizations that will really help you secure opportunities. They have in-person and virtual networking events that you can get involved in. A lot of ways to really build your skills and network with people being part of these different organizations. So when you're at those events, a lot of times what you'll do is try and find ways to potentially get an informational interview or ask someone to spend a couple minutes with you. That's something that you may ask someone to do on LinkedIn. You may say, send an outreach message to someone saying, oh, I saw that you're also a Zarb alum and you came from a similar background to mine and broke into the space. I'd love to find out a little bit more about how you got into your organization, how you've, been as, kind of tips that you might be able to give to me as someone breaking into the industry. What are the things I should be doing? What kind of skills might be able to do? So those are the questions that you may ask someone when you get that opportunity. And you should really try to get one or two of those per week if possible. And a big thing with that you are not doing is you are not in an informational interview asking someone for a job or asking them for an internship. They know that you're looking for potentially for a job. They know you might be interested in an internship, but you're really leveraging them for their skills, for who they are, and the advice they might be able to give you. In many cases, people may say, oh, we may be hiring, this is what our internship cycle looks like, but you really want them to make the move on asking you for your resume or looking at ways that you can, potentially connect with them or someone else in the organization. But you're definitely not asking them for an internship, asking for a job. I hear that regularly from alumni who say, it gets frustrating when a student reaches out to me and says, I saw you have this job posted on your website. Could you put my resume in for that position? Would you be a reference for me? They just met you 20 seconds ago via Zoom. Do you really think they want to put their name on the line for you? No. They'd rather have a conversation with you for a little bit, see if you're a good candidate, qualified for the position, and potentially then they might be able to shift you forward for that opportunity. So when you're getting ready for whether it's for this coffee chat or for a virtual interview, once you're selected, make sure you do the following things. Make sure that you're testing your technology. I know that there are a ton of problems that can happen. Just be prepared for them to operate the best way you can for it. So be prepared to work from your technology perspective. If you know that you sometimes have issues with I know at home, a lot of times my network will drop from time to time. So I have my phone ready. So just in case if it were to drop out, I could pick up my phone and jump back on the call very quickly with someone via having the phone. Make sure that your sound's working, your background is appropriate. Don't be in a public space where people are going to be walking around behind you all of the time. Make sure you're dressed appropriate and try and be enthusiastic as you can. It's very easy to get, especially if you go through and you're doing a full day of Zoom interviews, virtual interviews. Sometimes it can be hard to be still excited, to be enthusiastic. They can still read your body language. If you're doing a recorded virtual interview, those things are actually looking at and feeding off of your body language. They're looking at your eye contact with the camera. They're looking at a number of these different things to really help see how kind of polished you are in that environment for you. So the more you can do to prepare, the better off you're going to be. As they're asking you questions, make sure you use what's called the STAR method for you. What's the situation, the task, the action, and result? So that's something that, just like I was talking about in your resume bullets, when someone asks you about a project that you were assigned or something that you may have worked on, don't just talk about the task. So many people just get caught up when here's what was requested to do. And they don't lay out the story. They don't tell the story about, okay, I had to implement a corporate-wide performance management solution. I could end it there, right? But then I'm just focusing on the task at hand. I'm not talking about, here's why I needed to do it. The organization couldn't identify who their top and bottom performers were. So more of your bottom performers were staying with the company, and your top performers were frustrated because they're not getting paid for the work that they're doing. They're not being recognized. So they're leaving the company. So what actions did we take? You built out a whole system and profile to really identify what are the true values of an employee, what are the skills that were required of them, and what tasks were they able to complete? To be able to identify who your top people were and what were the results of that project. So we are able to then identify easily who the top 10 performers were, in the top 10% of performers were, who the middle were, and who the bottom performers were. What does that mean for you? It allows you to put the bottom performers on a performance plan so that they could either shape up or ship out of the organization. For your top performers, now you're able to compensate them more accurately and adequately for their experience for you. So it's just a whole way of telling a story for someone that gives them the full scope and picture of what you're doing. And you can also utilize it from in that full story, talking about the size and scope of it. We rolled it out first to 1,500 employees. Then we rolled it out to after we refined it, it rolled out to all 8,000 employees in there. And it became, part of the core competencies of the firm that I worked for. So it gives a full scope of what you've worked on when you really talk about that, all sides of the STAR method. So I've talked about a lot of different things today. And now one of the most important things that you're going to have to do is really create a plan for success. So of those things, you really have to take a look at all of these different things that I've talked about and kind of break them down into these, kind of eight steps of what you really need to work on, that you need to have this plan for yourself to really think about and research the jobs and industries where you want to work. Really focus on that resume. Make sure it's strong. Make sure it puts you to the top of the list. While you're applying to jobs, make sure that you're active, that you're applying to positions as they come available. Some top organizations, they will only post positions for some 48 to 72 hours. So if you say, oh, I'm going to go on every Friday to take a look at jobs, that may not be good enough, because a lot of companies, and I know some of the larger financials have done this for a long time, they'll post positions for 72 hours. Reason being, they know that if they left the job open long enough, they'd get 10,000, 12,000 applicants. They really only want the 500 applicants who are really interested and really want to work for their company and their firm. So that's who they're going to spend most of their time and focused on for those positions. Again, practice that elevator pitch so that you're ready to tell them who you are in relation to that position, in relation to the organization who they're hiring for. Work on that LinkedIn profile. Make sure that you're doing things from a networking, getting informational interviews. And at any point in time that we can provide resources and help for you here in grad business career relations, you can always go through Connect and schedule an appointment with us. You can also utilize any of the tools that we have as well, kind of 24/7 through our tools, through our sites as well. So that's pretty much my whole spiel and talking at you. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself. You should have the access to be able to unmute yourself and ask any questions that you may have.